I'm back after 3 months. I've been in Bellevue, and coming back from basically being in Bellevue and working out of Valve's offices, and with John Winder in person, who is our programmer, and our other programmer, I should say, because I'm also a programmer. And now coming home to my house, which I remember, I remember this, working in my house alone, which, as I predicted, I mean, I think long term is not great, but I predicted that coming back to it would be nice, and it is. It's really quiet. You can hear some banging in the background, which contradicts that, but quiet in the sense of, like, I guess it's very peaceful. There's no one else around, for one thing, and there are disadvantages to that, but for a while it's kind of nice, because the thing that struck me today is this is my first day actually back at work since I got home. I got home on Sunday, and it's now Thursday, so as you can tell from that, it took me a little while to readjust. I planned on a couple of days off to kind of recover, but also I could not get back on UK time for a while. The night I landed, went to bed at, like, I stayed awake till a good hour to go to bed, which was like 11 or something. And then went to bed and just slept for 13 hours, and then stayed awake for 26 hours, and then slept for 3 hours, and then stayed awake for... Anyway, I'm finally back on UK time, and this morning I just got up at 7. I started work before 8, and I'd finished my first bunch of tasks by 10 a.m. And in Bellevue I was like getting up at 10 a.m. and making it into work at like 11:30, and then having lunch at 12, and then so my productivity in terms of like working hours is way better here. I don't know why that is, actually. I was trying to figure it out while I was there. It was partly I had trouble sleeping at the right time, and then also because I had a cold for a long time, I really didn't want to risk not getting enough sleep. So if I didn't get to sleep till like 1 a.m. or something, I would not attempt to wake up before 9. And yeah, it kind of had a knock-on effect. But yeah, just not having to make yourself in any way presentable for the world saves a bunch of time. I think I might have come up with a better way of organising my sort of schedule. In Bellevue, I didn't have like a desktop PC to kind of play games on in the evening, and so I just lived without one for a while, and got used to it. And now coming back, the first thing I did, like as soon as I got my PC here fired up again and roughly working, was just waste like 5 hours, not playing games, just doing nothing, like reading Twitter. I don't know. There's just enough, because everything's there. Like that PC just has everything I've ever needed or wanted or used installed and ready. And I don't know what those things are exactly, but they evidently can sap an infinite amount of time just by switching from one thing to the next, and without really doing anything that productive. And so what I'm trying now is I just don't turn on that computer in the morning, and I just have a shower, come down and have breakfast, and then my Twitter stuff has to happen over breakfast on my laptop, which is way less comfortable. And so I end up wasting way less time, I think. So yeah, I did come back. A lot of people thought I wasn't going to come back. They just assumed that that my claim of sort of co-working with Valve and, you know, exchanging input on various things was a sort of ruse to, or a sort of a gateway into just working for them. That did not happen, and was never the plan. I did what I said I would do, which is work on e-signature almost all of the time. Got a load of feedback from them, got a load of Valve people to play e-signature and tell me what they thought, which was really good. I tested their various things, which I can't say anything about, and it was super productive. We got loads done. Working alongside John has been awesome. I also feel like, it was early days yet, but I don't feel like it's going to be too hard to work remotely on this stuff. There's a lot of things that I mostly worked independently anyway, working on different things. It's kind of bad to work on the same thing at the same time, because even with version control and even being in the same room, it still causes a whole bunch of problems when you try and merge. So we kind of work on separate things anyway, and it's really just a case of like, I think it'll be a thing of like, when there's a difficult problem to talk through, that might be better to do like over Skype or something. but nothing I did today needed any input really. And so what did I do today? I got music working in stations, which is important because composer John has done a bunch of possible tracks for station music, and I've been trying to judge them, and I just got to the point where I'm just like, I can express a bunch of opinions about this, but actually they're all bullshit because I haven't tried them in game. I need to hear them. I need to actually dock at a station and have that play and do some shopping while it's happening, or pick a mission while it's happening, and see then how it feels. And sure enough, it's totally different to how I thought, and tracks that I thought were going to work didn't work, and tracks that I didn't think were going to work did work. But as part of that, adding anything onto my music system was terrible. So this ties into the other thing I was going to say, which is like, it is at times still incredibly overwhelming how much is left to do. The fact that I'm nearing completion is good, but it means that when you do feel overwhelmed by what's left to do, you kind of think, oh my god, like, even now there is still so fucking much to do. And yeah, just looking at this music system, I kind of had a brief moment of panic because I was like, I need to add to this, and it is garbage. I think I wrote this thing 2 years ago, and I don't know, it looks like pre-Gunpoint Tom code, like the bad old days of just muddling through all these exceptions layered on top of each other in a messy, nested way that you can't read. And I just I had to disable the whole existing music system to test station music. And I tested station music with no other music working, and then I was like, actually I kind of need to hit the transition, and so I just rewrote the whole music system from scratch pretty much, and it's it's like 2 scripts instead of 8, and it's all the code's just in one place, and it's way simpler, and there's 3 different kinds of music now: piece, tension, and station, but they all follow the same formula, and they all have the same kind of variables associated with them. And I've just used a whole bunch of knowledge I've learned over the years about, like, works on a kind of signal-based system now, where things can pass with a signal saying, hey, I want some peaceful music, or I want some tension music, and it decides, am I going to respond to that, or am I in a state where I don't care? Like, you want peace music? I don't care, because something else wants tension music, and tension music is more important. That kind of stuff. And yeah, so my tool, I talked last time, I think, about like tools for fighting that feeling of overwhelmingness. Is there a better way of saying that? I don't know. And I've been keeping this essentials list and an improvements list, and then I also have a list that's called next, which is what I'm going to work on next, which is usually like 3 or 4 things. And there's a bunch of stuff on that was really improvements, and particularly because I was looking at feedback from the test is just wrapped up, the beta test that I was doing online, and I'd looked at feedback from that sort of halfway through and started really thinking about the problems that come up and what I should focus on there. And as always with tests, there's loads of really high potential changes. I feel like I'm not saying that right either. Loads of problems to which the solutions are not that hard to do and obviously super valuable. You've got really good data that this is a very important problem to solve, and you know how to solve it, and it's not that hard to do, although often it's more like there's sort of 8 different things you could do, and they're all relatively easy, and maybe you need to do all of them, or maybe you only need to do some, and it's not clear which are the best, which was kind of paralysing for a while. There was a whole bunch of things that I was like, which thing do I work on next? And now I've been mulling up that stuff. Actually, having a little break has been really useful, and travelling has been useful, because a bit of distance always helps a lot, and suddenly a whole load of new ideas occur to me that didn't occur to me before. A whole load of systems that are in there seem, it's obvious how to improve them. It's like, oh no, of course it should be this way. That's the feeling that you don't get when you're really immersed in something, I think. That's what distance is useful for, is like, you can often see a lot of options when you're immersed in something. It doesn't, for me anyway, I don't find I get total tunnel vision. I still have like 8 different ideas to solve a problem, but they just all look like, that all seems good, that seems good, that seems good, and then they've all got potential problems, they've all got potential advantages, and then you step back for like 3 days and think about something else, and you come back to it like, oh, it's obviously that one, obviously that one, the other one's stupid. But all that stuff is improving the game, and I've been trying to keep that separate from essentials, and my next list has kind of muddied the waters by just filling up with a bunch of things that are either. Station music has had to be in there, and I mean, it's not done, but the system is there now, the code side of it is done. And there's really, in my head I kept thinking, what is left to do? There's a tutorial for sure, and then there's sound. I need to do just a pass on sound because a lot of it's in a really bad way, and there's loads of easy wins there. That sounds like improvement, but really is essential. I literally could not. I would refuse to ship the game in its current state with the sound design. Whereas balance stuff and variety stuff, which is where most of the other improvements fall under, that I could ship without those things. And so it's sound, tutorial, and then the one I keep forgetting is dialogue, because John has written a dialogue system now that can read in script files, and the dialogue there's not going to be like a big pre-written story in Heat Signature. There's going to be a little bit of an intro, which will be the tutorial, and then there'll be every character you play as has this personal mission, and right now it's one long sentence that describes everything about your personal mission, and just talk to Fiasco, who's like the information broker, and just say, hey, here's what I need to do, and she says, it costs you 15,000, and that's it. What I want it to be more like is, on the character select screen, it says something like, get avenge my husband, or right now it will say kill the glitches officer who murdered my husband, and so all of it's there. I would rather keep that shorter, and I don't know, it's actually still up for debate whether it should be shorter or more specific, because more specific means, what the fuck has happened to the focus here? Sorry, do I need to move? That doesn't seem like it's going to be any better. That was really blurry. Sorry if it's been like that for a while, I didn't notice. Yeah, maybe like what that description says is not the important part. The important part is that when you talk to Fiasco about it, you need to have a bunch of options, just so it's more organic, and particularly so that it's clear on what's happening. It's not. Right now it seems very weird that she just sort of, I don't know, knows exactly what to do, and all of it costs roughly the same amount of money. I want it to be more of a conversation where she says, like, what's your problem? And you say, look, I'm looking for someone, they killed my husband or whatever, and then she will, say what she can do about that and how much it's going to cost and everything. And that stuff, I started writing it and realised, God, this is complicated because it's so conditional. It needs to know so much about what the personal goal is. There are so many different personal goals at the moment. I mean, 7, something like that. But that's a lot of... There's no reusability between those. Everyone has to be a completely different conversation. And yeah, I've just got to write that. And then another use for that conversation system will be, I want at least one person from each faction who you can talk to about that faction. Like, they're former members of that faction because they're now independent because you can talk to them. But they can just give you information about that faction, but also information about all the other factions, filtered through their own perspectives. Because one of the sort of important things about their factions is just that there's no like objective truth about which one is good, or like even whether what they believe about themselves is true. Like what one faction believes about itself is different to what the other factions believe about it, even in a factual way. Like they differ on literally what happened. And those, I think, are going to be the bartenders in the stations. Not every bartender, but just like 4 of them will be ones who have are happy to like share their personal history, and so that those will be named pre-written characters that will be in everyone's games, although they pop up in different places because your galaxy is random. Obviously, it'll be like the first sovereign station you liberate. There's the sovereign bartender, and they've got something to tell you because they all have bars anyway. And also bartender. I was thinking about it, and like bartender makes a lot more sense than like a random patron at a bar. Like just in real life, I've very rarely struck up a conversation with just a total stranger at a bar, like who's by themselves or anything. Whereas it's quite common to get in a conversation with a bartender because it's kind of like, in some places, part of their job. Some of them see it that way, and they're usually very good at it. So it makes perfect sense. If you're going to like have a conversation with a stranger about like their background and stuff, bartenders are one of the few situations where like that generally does happen in real life quite often. Taxi drivers would be the other one. If there were any taxi drivers in this, it would be very natural to get a load of background lore from them, particularly filtered opinions about other factions. But bartenders are a better fit for Heatsig. So those have to be done, and then those are the only three like sort of big things that must be in there, and I think I'm going to do those first because it's bugging me that they're not done, and I feel like once they are done I'll be less overwhelmed. The to-do list will look less scary because there'll still be loads of things, like thousands of things, but if any one of them could be left out and we still ship, then that whole list becomes a lot less scary. It's more like, how many of these can you do? How many of these are you willing to do? Whereas right now it's like, well, I just have to do some of these things. It's a little bit awkward because the tutorial ideally would be the very last thing you do. In case we change some mechanics or something, it would suck if I've already made a tutorial for the mechanics this way and then we change it again. But you can't postpone it forever. I think at some point you've got to say, okay, this is now the most important thing left to do, and do it. So dialogue will be next because, like I say, I want to delay tutorial as long as possible. Sounds, like I say, are essential. I'm leaving that. I'm not doing that next because it's fun. And dialogue, it's not going to be that much fun to write. I enjoy writing it, but it's incredibly technical with this particular kind of dialogue. It's going to be a whole load of special cases and exceptions and ifs, and it's going to be fiddly. So I'm not looking forward to that, so I'm doing it next to get it over with. And then sound will be really fun. I think it'll be quite... I could definitely... If you just said, you have a day to fix sound and hit signature, I could do it. If I start doing it and think, ooh, another day would be great, then fine. But it's not going to be... There's no humanly possible way it could take more than a week. And there's loads of things I'm really excited to do in that. Like, I mean, just... It would make such a difference if there was a sword sound effect, like just on the most basic level. They make the sound over a wrench right now, and that's just so bothering to me. And then it will be on to improvements. And the improvements are going to be, it's a big category and there's lots of stuff in it. There's actually a third category I'm not talking about, which is technical issues, because that's John's department now. If I had that on my plate as well, I would be crying right now. It would just not look like the end was in sight. So improvements are going to be mostly... I'm going to delay looking at the rest of the feedback until it's going to focus again, isn't it? I'm going to stay dead in the centre. I'm going to delay looking at the rest of the feedback until I've finished the essentials, because I don't want to get distracted by it too much. Well, it's just a job in itself to look through that, and it's not an essential job, so I'm going to leave it till after I've done the essential jobs. It has been good to, like I say, have some distance and mull over those problems and come up with solutions kind of in the back of my head rather than focusing on them. And I have loads of those, and yeah, it's going to be mostly around creating... I was talking about this to my friend Robin, who used a term that's stuck in my head since, which is I was describing the kinds of changes I want to make, the kind of variety I want to increase, and he said, "Oh yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that, because it's I always wish the people who make like randomized games like this would focus on increasing dynamic range rather than like the number of possibilities a thing can generate, like a mission generator or a ship generator." Is not the interesting figure, really. The interesting figure is how different are the two most different ones it can create, and that would be dynamic range. And so that's that will be my focus, really. It will be, obviously, the big caveat to that is like the differences have to be A, interesting, so relevant to what you do, to the gameplay, and B, both fun. Like the very different things, both of them have to be enjoyable in their own ways. And I feel like we have such a good structure for this. Like it's so ripe for improvement here, because this mission system, even if it generates one that's going to be a total bastard, you don't have to pick it, and it's going to tell you in advance what the hazards are, and you can learn through experience which ones you like and which ones you don't like, which ones you find hard, which ones you don't find hard, which ones suit your play style, and then it's just going to be this really big menu of all those things mashed together in interesting ways, and you think, okay, I'm good against that kind of enemy, but I don't really like time pressure, and so I can make my decision about whether to take that mission based on that. And so what the game doesn't do right now is it doesn't combine all those elements in very free-form ways. It's very much like, if it's a hard mission, it will be big and have lots of shielded enemies and have a tight time limit. Whereas what I really want is for it to be like, this one's big, but it doesn't have many enemies, or this one's big, but it has no time limit. because then there's more combinations, which I just said didn't matter. But the combinations are more interestingly different, and yeah, the differences between them will be greater. But I don't have enough ingredients to play with on that right now. I can do something there, but we don't have enough enemy types or hazard types to really mix them in loads of interesting ways. So now it's good to have that in my head as like the end goal of mixing these things up in more interesting ways, because now when I'm thinking about, okay, I've got time to, I don't know how much time I will have, but whatever amount of time I've got, I'll be like, okay, I can add X enemy types in this amount of time, and however many that is, I can now focus them on the question of why is it interesting for this type to combine with this type, or this type to combine with this mission parameter, or so to give it like a more concrete example, I was originally thinking about an enemy that sets off the alarm when you kill them, but there's already a mission parameter that says an optional one that can come up as a requirement or can come up as an optional bonus that says you mustn't kill anyone. So adding an enemy type that you can't kill could be interesting, because you can't kill this guy but you can kill that guy, but it might not be the most fruitful direction just because we already have something a bit like that. Something I have tried recently that is really promising is when you kill the enemy they blow up. And that means like don't stab them but kill them at range, and that's a new thing. We don't have anything like that. And I've also had a bunch of ideas about sort of changing the way alarms work a little bit that might solve a whole load of problems. But those are all improvements, so they're being shuffled to the bottom of my list at the moment. And that also gives me the benefit of, like, once I've done the essentials, I'll probably have even more ideas about how it'll probably be even clearer to me which of these ideas are really promising, and I'll keep like jotting things down in the meantime, and hopefully have the goal is not to have like more ideas, because I already have way too many, way more than I can make. The goal is to have a stronger idea of which ones are valuable. Like if I would love to be able to look at that list of 1,000 things I've got to do and say, these 8 are going to be fucking killer, we should do those right away. And then, as always with these things, if you've made that choice right, if you work on something that does turn out to be valuable, 10 items fall off your to-do list. Not because it does the same job, but because now that you've done that, you realise, oh, we just don't need this. It just doesn't matter about that stuff, because this bit is so good now. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Not looking forward to the dialogue thing, but that'll be next. I feel, what's the word? Is it bullish? I feel up for the challenge. I feel like, yeah, I'll just tackle it. It's going to be hard, but I'll just do it. And then I get to do sound, which is going to be fun. Then I get to do tutorial, which is probably difficult, but I think interesting. And then all the essentials will be done, other than all the stuff John's doing, which is also essential, but I don't have to worry about that. And then I get to do improvement stuff, which will be the most fun part, I think.